Hello. We started a series last fall on the Great Monarch. And after the first video was put out, we were interrupted for quite a while because both myself and the editor, David, were subject to and had to suffer through hospitalizations and rehab and the whole works. But we got restarted again in February and March of this year and put out our second video. And we are working on the third one, and it will soon be published. But in the meantime, there were some new developments. Now, the third and fourth videos already have their outline and topics, and in fact, some places the script is already written back in February and March. I want to make that clear. However, there were new developments. As you know, President Donald Trump is in a serious military action against Iran. The deep state, the globalists, those are the elites, they are the international bankers. They hate Trump very much, but they are more panicked now because of this military action against Iran and because Trump is facing the midterms. They have been trying to get rid of Trump ever since he came down that escalator and said he was going to run for the Republican nomination. And Trump, you see, the main target seems to be Iran, but Iran is a side issue. The actual target is the globalist New World Order. He is dismantling this because the New World Order is really called a rules-based order, and he's dismantling this and their systems, and they just can't have that because it's the way the world has run for decades, at least post-World War II. And though you may not understand it, Iran is actually a proxy of the globalist world order, which is the headquarters is in the city of London. To catch you up to speed, I can't do all of that in this video, but we are going to recommend a video at the end that you could watch. It's a short one, but in 10 minutes or less, you will understand what I'm speaking of, because you will not hear this explained to you on the mainstream media news channels when you watch TV. So it may sound strange, but there are three cities that really rule the world: the Vatican, Washington, D.C., and the city of London. The city of London is just like Washington, D.C., a square mile that is not actually part of England, just like Washington, D.C. is not really part of the United States. It is its own government. And the same with the Vatican. It's a state by itself and not part of Italy. And these people are the ones who use Iran and have used it. So he is taking this away from them. And this is the New World Order, or also called the British Empire, which has been in charge for decades and decades. When Trump castrates Iran, the city of London has no way to cause chaos and increase tension in the Middle East. You see, these same globalists make the chaos, and then they come around and have ways to help you with it while they make money, and while they also control the world and make us live in anxiety, fear, tyranny, all of which they use to their advantage. And this is why England would not help us with Iran, nor would any of the other countries that are dependent on their oil. They were told and got the call that if you help the U.S., no oil for you. So England, or the British Empire, actually controlled the Straits of Hormuz. How? By Lloyd's of London. They run the insurance company. You don't have insurance from Lloyd's of London? No oil, because you're not going to be able to take your ship through the Straits of Hormuz because you have no insurance. You wouldn't take your car out on the road if you didn't have insurance. Can't take that chance. So Trump trumped them all. They thought, well, we'll just cancel everybody's insurance, and that'll put an end to Trump's little game. But he's always one or two steps ahead of them. He immediately ordered the federal government to set up an insurance company and give the ships going through the Straits of Hormuz insurance. Good insurance at good rates. Lloyd's of London used to get billions of dollars coming in just monthly from the insurance that they sold. And whenever tension in the Middle East got worse, they could raise the premiums. Kind of like if you buy a home in a flood zone, your rates go up. Everybody in Florida knows about the hurricane zones. Your rates go up. We have been controlled by the British Empire even after the American Revolution. The Military Intel Board that posted for 3 years, that posts explained all of this. And to this day, our tax dollars go to the City of London. Shocked, aren't you? Very, very hard for some Americans to believe. But I suggest you do more research on your own to get to understand this better. If you really want to know how the world is working and what is going on with Iran and the King Charles coming here, blah, blah, you have to get more research than just listening to the 6 and 11 o'clock news on the mainstream media TV channel. So I would like you to check out some videos on YouTube by Promethean, Promethean, Promethean. Some of those videos are amazing because it's a group that has a woman who has studied the British Empire for many, many decades. And she knows it inside and out and can thereby connect it to the current events. Now, these new developments, Trump has suffered more harassment and persecution than any other politician I can think of in my lifetime. And it's not over just because he got in and started his second term, not by a long shot. It's a constant objective of the deep state. And the more progress Trump is making at destroying them, the more panicked and the more desperate they get. It is the deep state that runs the worldwide child and sex trafficking networks. One of the main reasons Trump decided to go into the presidency. He wishes to make sure these child trafficking routes and systems are shut down. It's one of the reasons he wants to control the shipping lanes in the world. So now it's always been their objective, and they're getting more and more panicked, and in fact, it's increased lately. It's getting fired up again because it's getting close to the midterms, and they're panicking. We could actually have a chance to get Trump out. And it's true. If they can make us lose by lies and propaganda, and by, unfortunately, some Americans who just won't take the time to do a little bit of research and understand the news that's actually behind the news, well, you see, the world is undergoing a reset, and it's much better if the good guys are controlling that process. If the bad guys control it, that means the globalists. Well, you also already had a taste of that. The COVID stuff. Wasn't that a good taste of tyranny? Especially in places like England, Canada, and Australia. They suffered a lot worse than we did. Told they couldn't go out. They couldn't go to the parks. You had to do this. You couldn't work unless you had the vaccine. You were this, that, whatever. There was a lot of tyranny going on. That was run by the bad guys. I don't think we want to have a revisit with that. So they figure they can stop him, and everything would be undone. And then the Great Reset, how much Trump has already progressed in this, would be reversed. So the Get Trump machine is cranking back up. Oh, yes. And it started with the Pope Leo attack. What do you think that has anything to do with the globalists? That was just the Pope doing what the Pope is supposed to do. Not really, because it happened the day after he received a visit from David Axelrod. Does that name seem familiar? Yes, it was Obama's chief advisor. I thought these guys were off somewhere on a desert island. No, still doing business and making trips for Barack Obama. Flies all the way to see the Pope, and gee, he's not even Catholic. If that doesn't make you a little suspicious, it's an awful long trip. Plane fare is not cheap these days, I know. Oh my goodness. So he comes out and attacks Donald Trump. Now, how would that be a conspiracy to make Donald Trump lose the midterms? Let's get those brain cells rubbing together. Because if he can get the Catholics, or a good part of the Catholics, to break away as Trump supporters, he loses votes. But that's not the only thing, because this is a well-orchestrated conspiracy to really give a big attack to try to take votes from him for the midterms, because it's all they've got left. So the Pope's attack was just the first part of the plan. Then the second attack was right on Trump. The propaganda machine cranked up, and the day before Charles III stepped foot on American soil, there was an assassination attempt against Trump, number 3. Coincidence, you say? I don't think so. He's coming here, Charles III, ostensibly, that is, how people who pay attention to the news would see it. After all, Starmer refused to help send any of the British military to help Trump with the situation in Iran. And that kind of rubbed the wrong way. So most people accept the fact that Charles III is coming here to repair the broken relationship between the U.S. and Great Britain. In other words, to make friends again, to kiss and make up. Actually, Trump is killing the city of London. The monarchy is simply the figurehead. Now, it actually could exercise power over the government, but it doesn't interfere because it's not wanted to interfere. It's actually just the figurehead for the city of London. The guys that make the decisions and pull all the strings and do all the dirty dealings and all the plots against other governments, they stay behind the high walls that are locked. And even if the king wants to visit, he has to first ask permission. Now, they're the figureheads for these international bankers and these elites who make the decisions. So he wants to help to stop Trump lose the midterms. And remember that the City of London is the headquarters. And there are no coincidences in politics, as I said. In fact, King Charles would have preferred to be coming over here just in time for Trump's funeral. Now, if you don't think this is possible, or you think, oh my goodness, how could you say such a thing? Remember who was responsible for the Russiagate hoax. It was none other than MI6. It was hatched in Britain. In fact, our old friend, the Military Intel Board, Mr. Alphabet Man, who gave us Post for 3 years, showed us pictures of Peter Strzok and his girlfriend in London and put the caption underneath, "What do you suppose they're up to?" And of course, they were a big part of the Russiagate hoax. Also, now, if you get a hold of an old history book, I don't know about the new ones, but you'll find that it states that Britain was also involved in our Civil War. They wanted to make sure that America kept slavery in the South. So which side were they on? The South. They're the ones who wanted to keep slavery in place. After all, they're the first ones that brought slaves here. I'm sure you've heard of the East India Trading Company. That's why I always say, whether you agree with reparations that some Black Americans are requesting or demanding, or whether you don't, the point is, I think they ought to go to the City of London and knock on their doors. So after the attempted assassination, third attempt failed, they still had Plan B. It got up and running. And that was the one where they got a British genealogist, discovered that Trump was related to Charles III, that he's actually part of the English monarchy. Well, my goodness. To me, that's very suspect. They had to wait 10 years to find that out. They never claimed him as part of their own in all that time. You see, they have an algorithm that studies the papers and the social media accounts and articles that are put out. And by this algorithm, they can tell you whether anti-Semitic statements are increasing or not. The same is for the so many articles that have been explaining the evil of the British Empire. And therefore, there's been much discussion and talk over social media platforms about it. So now they get this plan, and this is what's called psychological warfare. Instead of defending the British Empire, because that would be difficult, they know about this, and they allow this continued hate and disclosure about their past and how they control the world. The disclosure is what Trump is bringing out. That's why you'll find a lot more people now are aware of the worldwide sex and human trafficking. And this is one of the reasons people don't realize that Trump is working to control all the shipping lanes in the globe. Because with the new QFS system, they will know who's spending money and where it's going to. There will no longer be money laundering centers. And so there won't be any ships who have human cargo. They just won't be allowed. He's going to destroy this whole corrupt system. And yet you have people saying, well, why does he need Greenland? Well, because the Arctic Circle is going to be one of the new points, shipping lanes to get through. So well, it's all ice. But Russia is already developing a nuclear-powered icebreaker. And then they won't have to go through the Panama Canal. They'll just zip around the Arctic Circle. But not if America is watching. And definitely not if Trump is there. So they allow all this, and they said, gee, we can't defend our evil empire. They come up with the idea that they will instead make Trump part of it. They are going to make a connection between Trump. If the people are beginning to find out that the British Empire is in control of most of the misery, they're causing most of the wars by playing Iran and Israel against each other and Israel against other Middle East countries. When they come to understand that Israel is simply a child of the city of London, and they have a lot of anger and hatred over this, they will then dislike Trump. They're going to connect him with it. I can just see them doing this and saying to some genealogists, look, we need you to prove that Trump is connected to the British monarchy. And the genealogist might say, well, I tried that a long time ago when he first became president of the United States. And I'm sorry, but there's simply not enough facts or sources to support it. Look, you don't understand. I'm not asking you if you want to. I said you're going to do it, or you won't have to worry about your reputation. You won't be around. Now, if you do a good job, you might get £250,000 put in your bank account, and you won't have to worry about anything then. At least that's a possibility. After all, remember Barack Obama with no birth certificate. And then suddenly, when he got close to his second term, he comes up with a birth certificate from Hawaii. Of all places, Hawaii. Right. And then Sheriff Arpaio of Arizona, a man I met with my husband, maybe 20 years ago, a great patriot, spent 2 or 3 years of his life proving with forensic science that it was a fake. So this is very easy for me to understand. And as proof, when you read something very serious, and you think you've got all the facts, and then at the very end, they have this disclaimer that says, don't believe anything above there. Well, there is a disclaimer from this genealogist that definitely seals my suspicion. This is what I mean by a disclaimer. Online genealogists have previously struggled to ascertain a clear line of Mr. Trump's ancestry due to confusion and gaps in ancient Scottish record keeping. Confusion and gaps. Missing records, that means. However, veteran genealogist Robert Barrett, former research editor at the Daily Mail, has studied multiple land records, church records, and Scottish peerage documents to piece together this intriguing research. Oh, so it's pieced together. You got to add something from here and with that and whatever. Sounds like coming up with chop suey. For example, Mr. Trump's descent from Donald McKay is confused by his daughter's first marriage to a McDonald. You mean a genealogist gets confused when a woman gets married and the name changes? I mean, you would think a genealogist would understand that that's going on all through the family tree. Anyway, after the daughter's first marriage to a McDonald, after which she married a clergyman named Hugh Monroe, and the Trump line hails from there. Well, it sounds to me like bologna and salami, and no matter how you slice it, it's still bologna and salami. Too many missing holes, and it gets done just before Charles III comes here to beg to keep our relationship. Actually, he wanted to see Trump's funeral. As you could tell when he went to Congress, he was just buddy-buddy with them. They were slobbering all over him. And I remember one of the members of the Trump administration said that these guys can get donations for their campaigns from these people. Of course, it goes through many different routes before it actually gets to them. But they all look like they're just 100% City of London. And that's why they're globalists. And that's why so many of them do not, and refuse to vote for what's good for America. Well, that's bad enough, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. Because when the story of Trump came out saying that he was part of the English Monarchy, it's much more evil than you even imagine. Remember going back to our previous videos, number 2 and 3. Based on my lifetime study of prophecy, I wanted to be able to give some principles out for interpreting prophecy because these principles escape most people. And I hope that they would increase their faith in the great gift of prophecy and increase their faith in general. Plus, I wanted them to be able to use these great Catholic prophecies for guidance in the crisis that we have ongoing in the church and also the crises that the world is in. I wanted them to be able to use it like we use a flashlight while walking in a dark forest. So I explained at great length that a prophecy can be fulfilled in the bloodline of a family, not just the individual mentioned or pointed out in the prophecy. Also, how important lineage is. And we see examples of this, of course, in the Bible, and that's where we get this principle. But also in the secular world, in monarchies. So 2 to 3 days later, here come the planned fruits of this evil tree planted by the British, MI6, with their espionage and plots, assassination plots, and plots against the sovereignty of many nations. Their cunning is unsurpassed. But now they have made a mistake because they came into my territory, prophecy. Because I regard myself as an expert of Catholic prophecy, especially that which regards the Great Monarch and Trump. So I felt I needed to refute and challenge these tactics, which are nothing more than psychological warfare. So the British Empire claims that Trump is related to Charles III. Now, if you've been keeping up with the news, you'll remember that a few years ago, Charles III publicly claimed that he was related to Vlad the Impaler, who is the historical vampire. So there is a lady spokesperson from Quest, and I'd like to have you see a clip of how she claims the Antichrist must be descended from King David, and that the only family in the world that can claim to be related to King David is, guess what? The British monarchy.
The person that meets the criteria of what biblical scripture says is absolutely a person who must come from a lineage that connects itself back to King David. The royal family in Britain are the only families on this planet that can trace their lineage all the way back to King David.
So now that you've heard what she said, do you see where this is going? Do you? Psychological warfare at its best, or worst, depending on your point of view. So let's see. Trump, they say, is related to the British monarchy. Therefore, he could be the Antichrist, according to what they say and what they've set up. Now, you know that all the evangelicals and fundamentalists, I'm not too worried about Catholics doing this, but the evangelicals and fundamentalists, all they need to do is hear that Trump could be the Antichrist based on what this lady preacher says. And there lies the potential for more lost votes. This is a very cunning plot to break and weaken MAGA. First, the Pope with his attack, which is designed to help Trump lose Catholic votes. And then this Antichrist connection, supposed connection. Now, this is not just fodder for wackos, okay? But every single Trump hater, whether they're obvious or whether they're hidden, and that would include those Democrat operatives that are paid to be trolls and go on and make videos, as well as comments on videos that are negative against Trump. They will pick up on this like, they will just pick up on it, trust me, like you wouldn't believe. And I want you to see, already the videos are coming out. And this is a video I want you to see a couple of clips from. That is Harley Schlanger. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a member of the LaRouche organization, and he's a very good political pundit. He lives in Germany, and he's generally been pro-Trump, but he tries to stay very neutral. So he's someone good to listen to, and I've listened to him for years. And he's being interviewed by Mr. Garland Nixon, and this Garland Nixon is, I would think, by listening to him, a liberal, Democrat, Trump hater, but he's not one of those obvious ones. If you pay attention to the clips, you'll see that if Harley Schlanger says something that's just mildly negative about Trump, he will immediately pick up on it and exaggerate it and increase it, okay, and make it proliferate. So listen to this, because I also am surprised. When Charles III came here, it was amazing to watch how the Congress gave him all these standing ovations. And Trump commented how he'd never been able to get the Democrats to stand up for him, which was to expose the Democrats as globalist lovers. They're in cahoots with them, as well as the rhinos. But I am amazed also at how soon people forget, because when Princess Diana was killed in that tragic accident, for years there was speculation by so many investigative journalists, reporters. It appeared in so many articles in periodicals and newspapers all over the world. There was always suspicion about Charles being involved in some way or not, or even in planning to get Diana killed. But yet, we just seem to forget that. Then Prince Andrew, his brother, was arrested just a couple of months ago. And yet, everything that Andrew has done, Charles has done, and probably even worse. Isn't that strange? All right, listen to this clip.
Garland, it's on display now. Look what he did with his brother, with the former Prince Andrew. Andrew wasn't doing anything that Charles himself didn't do. Andrew was known as a salesman for British armament industry. Well, in the period where Andrew got that position, Prince Charles was selling 2 to 3 times the amount of dollar value of weapons to the Arab governments that had just gone through the rebellion of the Arab Spring. The irony there, and this is typical of the British, the Arab Spring was funded, including the Muslim Brotherhood and the Sunni Revolution. It was funded by and run by the Mossad and the CIA. And after it was crushed, Prince Charles was sent in to sell weapons to the people who crushed it. So they funded the riots, just as they were doing with the riots in Iran leading up to this war. And then they turn around and sell weapons to the leaders to crush it. That's the British Empire.
I remember watching this vampire movie, and one of the vampires who had bitten somebody, and the person became a vampire, was becoming a vampire, but they didn't want to be a bad guy. So they're like, I don't want to go around biting people. And he kept saying, you're a killer. There's nothing you can do about it. You have my blood in your veins. One of these days it'll come out. You're a killer, right? That's what it is. But you're a vampire. You got my blood in your veins. And one of these days you're going to start biting everybody because you don't have a choice. That's who you are. That's kind of what he's saying. But they put it like we're nice guys.
The proof his postulation that since Trump has the blood of the British monarchy, that one day he will become just like him. My goodness. Well, let's see. Does the Bible say that? I don't think that's exactly the way Scripture claims. Because in Scripture we see that Cain and Abel were brothers, and certainly they shared the same blood. And yet we know that one was good and the other was a killer. They weren't the same. Then we have Ishmael and Isaac. They're two brothers. And yet one became one of the founding fathers of Islam, and the other became a forefather of the Israelites. That's about as different as you could be, like day and night. So that's not even based on biblical principle. And to me, it's a bunch of hogwash. When I was told that Trump was the great monarch in January 2016, it was almost impossible to tell anyone and have them believe it. And I'm talking about even good, honest Christians, even those who study prophecy. Just forget it. They could never understand or buy it. I found more awareness of Trump's special role among the left, atheists, Satanists, God-haters, communists, watching their extreme reactions to anything that he did, even though it had been done by other presidents many, many times before him. This was verification that they knew and suspected something different about him. Then came those strange protests, those No Kings protests. Yeah, the bad guys knew, at least those elites who were paying for those protests, because most of the protesters you see on the streets don't really know what they're protesting. They can't explain to anyone. But in 2026, this year began a big change. Many Christians have noticed or recognized Trump's uniqueness. And not even being Catholic, I should say, even those who are not familiar, or are familiar, I should say, with the Catholic prophecy, just don't know what to call him. I heard one newscaster describing some recent things that Trump had did and said, this man, he said, I don't know what to call him. He said, history does not know how to deal with someone like this. We just don't know what category to put him in, end quote. All right. So I keep wondering and watching and seeing what happens. Who's going to be the first one to put it together? Now, here's an interesting thing. Jesse Waters, who's on Fox News Primetime about a week and a half ago, during his program, stated that he believed that Trump was the eagle of the book of Revelation. Wow, was I amazed, okay? I mean, they're getting closer, okay, getting hot. But yet, almost every day, as it seems, the good people are more and more beginning to recognize Trump's uniqueness and specialness and trying to find ways to deal with it or describe it. From the left, things are getting a lot more extreme. Now they not only criticize him as being a fascist or calling him another Hitler or a dictator, they've gone way beyond that. They now say he's the Antichrist. And what's worse, they're even saying he's related to King Charles III of England, who is, by his own admission, the head vampire. So I must and will denounce those claims as complete hogwash and contrary to prophecy. The Great Monarch is biblical. He's referenced in at least 2 places in Scripture. And this has been recognized by those Catholic interpreters of prophecy, 2 famous ones, Yves Dupont and Mr. Zabato. The place that I find the easiest to show his reference in the Bible to the Great Monarch is 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 6 to 7. He who now holds back, that is, restrains, until he is out of the way. A lot of people, even Catholic priests, because they're not all that versed on prophecy, they have too many other things to do. And their theological courses are not that deep into the end times prophecies. I love Father Chris Alar. He's great. But even when he speaks of it, after he says something, he'll give a disclaimer. Well, people say, he'll say, or we think it's this way, or it might be this way. So if you want to find it in the Bible, it's 2 Thessalonians, verse 6 to 7. Now, it's not a movement. I've actually heard some priests say that it's a movement. Well, I'm sorry, but the official Bible of the Catholic Church always has been and still is to this day the Latin Vulgate. And if you look in the Latin Vulgate, verse 6 and 7, you will see it says qui, Q-U-I, which even with my high school Latin, I know means he. If it was a she, it'd be que, Q-U-A-E. And if it's an it, like a movement, it would be quod, Q-U-O-D. But it says qui, and a he is a he, even in these days. So, the other place that some Catholic interpreters have believe that it is mentioned is in Revelation chapter 10. The angel that has 1 foot on the sea and 1 foot on land. Supposedly, though it's not my interpretation and I'm not able to really grasp it, but I have to accept what other Catholic interpreters have said, that this means the transition between chaos in the world and between having a firm foot and a firm foundation. And this is the angel who declares it begins, okay? And if we look at Venerable Holshouser's prophecies, in which he takes the ages of the church, the beginning of the new age would be when the Great Monarch appears and is busy doing what great monarchs are supposed to do. Donald Trump is the Great Monarch, and he is related to the French King Louis IX. Anything else is hogwash. If your knowledge of prophecy is so rudimentary or even non-existent, all you have to do is distill the prophecies to one line. Know the Great Monarch by his actions. The Great Monarch is to restore Western Christian civilization. And one important facet of that is to defeat the Mohammedans. Let's see, the Mohammedans. That's the Islamists. Islam. And since 2014, they have ravaged Europe, the seat of Western Christian civilization. Now, I want you all to do an exercise called turning on the old brain cells and think. Go back. Who in this world, in recent history, or even the last century, that you can think of and give a name to, has defended Western Christian civilization? Who has fought against Islam and its existential threat to the Christian nations of the world? Who has said, if you're still not getting any names, how about this one? Who has said, we need to have no more Muslims come to the United States? We need to stop Sharia law. Who has done this? And way back in 2016, when he first was running, the first time for president, he had a big hoopla when he said we need to decrease the number of Muslims coming into the United States. Oh my goodness, the poop hit the fan then. The only man, the only one, is Donald Trump, the Great Monarch. And he's fighting Iran right now, and it's not a mistake, and it's not because Israel forced him to. It's because he's doing what the Great Monarch was created to do and sent to do. Amen. Have a nice day.